Good morning and welcome to the final day of Advertising Week 10. Great to see you here. I think we've had a few Avicii casualties from last night by the look of it. I hope you've got a strong coffee in hand, or if you're British, a cup of tea, I would hope. My name is Kathleen Saxton. I'm the CEO of the Lighthouse Company, a talent search firm in London, but I'm also the chair of the advisory board for Advertising Week Europe. And some of you may be aware that this year we took your wonderful learnings from everything you've done in New York for the last 10 years and brought it to London for the first time in March this year, and it was an amazing success, and we are so grateful that we managed to come and watch you guys do it right for the last 10 years and bring it to London, and we're going to come back again in March 2014. What we discovered, I think, was that actually the talent that you find in collaborative situations like these kind of galas, conferences, the thought leadership and the show business together really invigorates our industry, which obviously we know contributes hugely to the economy. And I think also for us, it makes us think about how we can work better together and learn from each other, whether it's across the continent, whether it's across the Atlantic, whichever it may be. So I hope today's session is about us giving something back to you, our cousins, from the British side of things. Today's session is split into 4 parts, so bear with us. It's 4 different sections. I hope you'll stay for all of it. And we've entitled it The British Invasion. I hope you kind of take that with good humour and good spirit. First of all, we have some amazing panel of CEOs that have actually all come across the pond from Great Britain to lead businesses in the United States. And I think it'll be quite interesting, I hope, for you to hear their perspectives on what they've learned, what they got wrong, what they've got right, and how it's different, actually, in 2 different continents. Secondly, we have the Soho 10 questions with UK agency and client trade associations from the AA to the IPA, and they'll be talking about, again, the differences and what we can learn and collaborate with each other. Thirdly, and probably the bit I'm most mischievously looking forward to, is Speaker's Corner, and we have 5 or 6 actual keynote speakers from some of the UK's most creative minds. So again, I think all will be very different, all very provocative. And if Andy Hart from Microsoft stays to 5 minutes, I will eat my hat. And last but not least, we have the Ronnie Scott's Roundtable, a conversation on how the UK is blazing a trail for creativity and technology and looking to reshape the global business and economy. But without further ado, God save the Queen. It's Charlie Wilkie, who's actually from The Guardian. He's the SVP of Sponsorship, to kick off our first session.
Thank you very much. I'm sure some of you were expecting Janine Gibson this morning. And I just wanted to say, in light of recent NSA activity, I sometimes step in as her decoy on a Thursday. So. But I wanted to say thanks to a great panellist that we have here. I'd like to introduce all 3. First of all, we have Chris MacDonald, who's the New York president of McCann Erickson. We have Robert Harwood Matthews, New York president, TBWA and Shite Day. Steve Williams, who's president of PhD New York, and Kathleen Saxton, who we've just been introduced to. So I guess the main focus for this conversation is trying to understand the challenges and the upsides of crossing the Atlantic in a global economy. I moved across about 3.5 months ago, and I've definitely noticed some differences in terms of culture working here comparative to the UK. So I'd like to kick off actually with Chris, who, from what I understand,
in the middle.
What I understand, Chris, you've been here about 2 months, so I thought you're in the perfect place to maybe highlight some of the immediate differences that you see working in the US versus the UK.
I think one of the most obvious, I've been here 2 months, one of the most obvious things is it's a bloody big country. I know that's obvious to you, but it's not so obvious to me. I came here and I drove 6 hours up New York State, and I was like, I'm still in New York State. And in England, I'd have been in Scotland. It was a very funny moment. The second thing was, on my arrival, I arrived on July the 1st, so the first email I did to the agency was giving them an extra day off to celebrate independence from Great Britain, which was a slightly odd moment for me. And I think the third thing, which a lot of people did say to me, was just be careful on how much you eat, because everywhere I go, there's food. And amazing food. So certainly one of the things I love most about being here is the food's amazing. I'm just trying not to eat too much of it.
And how about you, Robert?
Well, I've been here a year. I think, to echo what Chris has said, the scale of the place is the first thing that strikes you. And that's not just from a geographical point of view and sort of expecting to find yourself in Scotland. It's also from a point of view of the sort of scale of businesses that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
The sort of business that we would have probably sold our grandmothers for in England, we might be looking at and going, I'm not going to pitch for that. I'm going to leave it this time, go for something bigger. You walk into marketing departments which are the same size as whole agencies you've run before. So for me, scale has been the most apparent and obvious difference in coming to the US. I've actually worked in the US once before. I worked in Los Angeles, so I had a kind of East and West Coast experience too. And there are all sorts of nuances and differences between working in the West Coast and working at the East Coast, which I can go into.
I was going to say, anything you can share now?
Probably the most apparent one was when I arrived in the West Coast, I went to TBWA Shire Day in Los Angeles. And I think because all I knew about the place was Lee Clow and flip-flops and sandals and surfing, I was expecting everyone to be very liberal and very kind of hippie and very kind of easygoing. And actually I walked into a very different environment. The environment across there is less like London. It's a little bit more conservative, a little bit more, sort of thoughtful and staid. It's where I think New York is a lot more like London, and it's kind of slightly more rock and roll and a little bit faster paced and a little bit more confrontational, which I think we all enjoy.
And Steve, why do you think we've had this influx of UK CEOs over here?
Got the shit.
Go on, Steve.
I'm not sure what the data point is on a lot of CEOs. I mean, I would tend to agree that it feels like there's a lot coming in, or senior managers, whatever we want to call these people. Yeah. But I think it's just the scale of opportunity out here. I think, when you look at the scope of the UK, as much as I love it, it's just a bigger platform here. It's bigger, more interesting. And, when we talk about scale of country, it's, managing the USA, America, is like managing Europe. And we wouldn't think of Europe in the same way as we all try and manage in our own businesses America. So I think it's not about nuance. It's, incredibly different. So I think it's the scope of opportunity. I think people increasingly in the world are looking to learn different stuff. I personally am, and I'm speaking for these guys. I'm sure we all want to come over and learn new stuff, different stuff, but still be deeply connected to the work and to our clients and to our people. And this is just a great big platform to do that with.
At risk of doing ourselves a disservice, I suspect there's also, and I don't know the facts behind this, but I've read a couple of articles about talent shortage. And I think there is an increasingly small pool of people who want to be agency CEOs, especially in big networks. So for lifers like ourselves who've committed and said this is what we want to do and this is where we want to be, it's a very easy choice. But I think there's an awful lot of people, certainly at my age, who... Sorry, Chris, I wasn't aimed at you.
I should sit in between these two, really.
Who have shifted into other professions, gone into tech companies or social media businesses or into media platforms themselves, because the range of opportunities is that much greater than it was, say, 15 years ago.
I think there's another point, which is I think it's now a global economy with global brands, and I think, therefore, there are many more aims towards global citizens. And I think probably one of the things we're doing is reflecting the global trend towards, look at The Guardian. The Guardian's becoming very clearly and has a strategy to become a global brand. And I think in London, we've all worked on a lot of very big global brands, either across Europe and across a lot of geographies. And I think that probably helps us.
And Kathleen, obviously your work involves helping mapping and identifying talent for companies, both in the US and in the UK. So what do you see as the future in terms of, I guess, the migration of talent from the UK to the US and equally so talent from the US over to the UK?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think the pattern is that people are more interested in coming from the UK to the US, and I think to both of your other points, the sheer size and scale of the opportunity is what attracts you. And I think I work with lots of UK CEOs who become supreme at their particular role in a domestic agency, but what do they do from there? They either get on a plane all the time and do a global role or an EMEA role where they're constantly travelling around. And actually, the ones that are really of the moment and into digital and data and all this new good stuff are probably around the age of having relatively young to teenage-level children. So again, that has a big impact on their lifestyle too. So actually, a wholesale move to either the US or APAC is becoming a more interesting idea for them rather than trying to make it work from your home in Surrey or whatever it may be. So I think there's a big pattern of change in there. I think also the sheer scale of the buy in the US, the actual size of the financial market and monies that you're moving around and the businesses that you can influence from the client point of view, the sheer scale of that is very, very seductive. And I think as a headhunter, once someone has done a multiple geographical sort of leadership position in either or 2 or 3 territories, your CV opens up to all sorts of other possibilities rather than just being someone who stayed in one territory for 25 years.
Just building on that, though, as well, I think one of the massive differences is in the US, I've been out here nearly a year and a half or so, it's very much about the business of advertising, you know, and I think that's accentuated from a media point of view too, specifically. Less so probably from a creative agency or integrated agency point of view, but in media it is. Whereas in the UK, because it's smaller, it feels like it's more. It feels like it's more of a creative community, and that's not better or worse. It's just very different. So I think one of the things that, you know, we as CEOs, presidents, MDs, whatever, come out and do here is learn much more about the business of our business, as opposed to before. In the UK, I mean, speaking for me, it was supremely about the work and the people. Whereas here, you're managing a lot of cash, and it's really, really important. And therefore, the accent is rightly, understandably so, but I think we've all got to find the balance here on flawless execution. That begins to be everything. We've got to make sure that we keep this balance of creativity and flawless execution going, and I think it's easier to keep that balance in the UK because it's smaller, honestly, and it's more of a challenge here.
And so, Kathleen, do you see there being much sort of variances in the types of skill sets that people are looking for, given that point that's just been made?
I think most agencies, media owners, clients, to be fair, are looking for very similar things right now, either side of the Atlantic. But what I do see is the way in which people present themselves for those positions is very, very different. So if I'm interviewing, and often when I'm interviewing over here and I'm looking for candidates, they will tell me they have 100% of the skills that I'm looking for. They're probably overqualified, and I'm sort of lucky to be having an audience with, which I love and enjoy. In the UK, we can be a little bit more self-deprecating. Obviously not our esteemed panel, who are very happy to be here, but I think there are times when we are a little bit shyer. I find even major leaders a bit shyer about whether or not they're ready for that next big move. And so when I'm interviewing in the UK and interviewing here, I have to have a slightly different filter that I'm looking at the individuals through to make sure that I'm aware of that. The other thing people get confused around is we speak the same language, but actually we're very different cultures. And I think people they assume that they can come and move out here and work out here and just carry on as they did before. It's a very, very different country for lots of brilliant reasons. And I think people sometimes get tripped up by that when they first arrive.
And I guess a question for all three, which is quite pertinent, you know, given you would have had many sort of preconceived ideas about what it would be like coming over here and working in the US. What's been the biggest surprises? I guess I'll kick off with that with Chris.
Biggest surprises? It's a good question. I think the biggest surprises come back to the point about scale. I mean, it's just so much bigger. The opportunities are bigger. I think there are a lot more people in the room, which I think can be good and bad. I think there's a big testing culture, because I think clients are under a lot of challenges to ensure that what they're doing delivers, certainly in terms of the creative work. And I think some of that testing culture is challenging, because you've got to navigate through it to try and protect the work. And I think some of it's about making sure that you create that trust and relationship with clients. That means that they believe in what you're doing. And I think that's one of the biggest surprises, is kind of how you've got a lot of people in the room and how you test. Those are probably the way that I've seen. This is based on 2 months.
I was expecting it to be a bit more brutal out here, and it isn't. And what surprised me most is it's much more sensitive around relationships, which is great. I think in the UK we forget, and in spite of ourselves, we go at a pace in the UK. I don't mean it's not aggressive here particularly, but I was expecting it to be much more kind of, you know, bonfire of the vanities, and it isn't. And that was a nice surprise. And you have to recalibrate how you think about how you deal with clients. And, you know, from a media point of view, relationships are, you know, I'm not saying they're not important back in the UK, they are, but here it ramps up, you know, tenfold in terms of the need to keep connected. So it's a very different, you know, again, cultural mindset in terms of how you deal with that. So for me, that's a very big difference.
And Robert, who do you think's breaking real ground at the moment in the media space in the US? Who have you been impressed by?
Most impressed really by the media platforms themselves. I mean, the level of engagement that we've had with TBWA, with the likes of, you know, Tumblr, Onion, Foursquare, you know, whoever we've invited in has come in very readily. Wired, I think, have been in. We've had a very strong engagement with media platforms, and that's been very exciting for us, because obviously as a creative agency, that's something we need to be really adept at and aware of and close to and in cahoots with. Is cahoots an English phrase? Probably is.
That's an awesome word.
In cahoots. So I think for us that's been the thing that's most impressed me. I mean, we've been elbows out in competition with every other agency in town, and so most of the time I've had my head down looking at what we're trying to do and how we're going to get better, rather than studying the competition per se.
And what are the panelists' thoughts around the conversation on the pending IPO at Twitter? Do we have any views on how that's going to play out?
Go on, Chris.
After you.
I think Twitter's fascinating. I think it's the medium platform technology changer of our times. I mean, talk about cultural effect on the world. It's obvious. I think one of their biggest challenges is going to be how they monetize versus the monoliths of Google, Facebook, just to name two. I think that will be a big challenge. I think what they've done to get closer to big media vendors over here, CBS, for example, and how they link engagement planning with their platform is everything. Super, super, super smart. So I think they're on the right track, but it's going to be a real challenge to monetize. But if anybody can do it, Twitter can, because they epitomise what innovation is in media technology platforms.
I agree with him.
Yeah.
No, I think there's another point, which is actually the other challenge.
They give you enough time to think about that?
Yeah, thanks for that.
Cool.
Is the fact that when you go through an IPO, if you look at what happened to Facebook and some of the others, it's about that element of distraction that comes and having to open yourselves up in a different way. And I think that'll be a challenge short term. But I do agree with Steve that I think long term, this is an unbelievable platform with unbelievable opportunity.
What they said.
And something I've picked up an awful lot since I've been here is a lot of excitement around native advertising. And I guess my question is, to what extent is that a buzzword at the moment versus something that we should all get excited about? Native advertising.
What do you mean, sorry?
So I said native advertising to 5 people because I saw that was maybe one thing we could talk about, and they've all gone, what's native advertising?
No, exactly.
I mean, all native advertising is advertising smart and contextually within an embedded piece of content. Yes, I mean, it's what advertising is all about, whatever advertising is anymore. So yeah, it's here to say it's important, but it's what we experience every day. I don't think it's a new thing. I just think we found a new moniker for it. It's not a new thing. It's what smart people do to influence people in marketing.
And back to you, Kathleen, from the talent perspective. So, what's the biggest challenge you face in helping fulfill some of those requirements from CEOs that you're getting? What's the big challenge you're up against?
I think people want CEOs now that understand social and mobile and all the DSPs and everything else. And I think in the olden days we kind of had a model whereby we had certain specialists that did those things. I think now what we're looking for, and I think Andrew Robertson has said this, actually I think last year he was talking about this when I last saw him, was that actually we're looking for CEOs that are an 8 out of 10 on everything. You need to be pretty good and have a good understanding of everything, and to therefore have maybe your specialist underneath that. I think gone are the days when you could be an ambassadorial CEO who kind of glad-handled clients and sort of turned up for agency reviews. I think it's much more now about really understanding and being curious about that business. And in my interviewing, I think I often meet people who just have given up the curiosity or have felt that everything's just gone too fast and they've kind of given up keeping up. And I think once that's happened, then maybe it's time for you to look at something else. So the challenge is about finding people that are constantly curious, are experimenting all the time. We have coming up on the panel Julian from Dennis, and Felix Dennis, who's obviously a very well-renowned publisher, always talks about the fact he doesn't have an email address, but every time a new gadget comes out, he gets it sent to him, he plays with it for a couple of days, understands what it can do, and then he feels he's still ahead of the curve. And I think you can do it any which way you want to, but I'm constantly being asked to look for those people who have a DNA that is in data and digital and actually are leaning into what the future of that looks like. And no one's got the answers. It's changing every 10 seconds. There's something new that comes along. We're trying to keep up with everything as we go. And the truth is we don't all know it all. And I think we're all trying to keep up as best we can. But if you start to give up, it's telling you something about your leadership.
And that comes back to Rob's point as well, which is that we have to be close to the platforms. We have to keep seeing them, hearing them, talking to them every day. Because actually that's the only way we're going to learn. And actually some of it's about what you learn from your own children. I mean, most of the conversations you have with very senior clients is they tell you what their children are doing, and then they feed that back in. And I think it's a very good point to say we have to become much more generalist across everything and curious. We have to be curious.
Yeah, I suspect one of the single biggest qualities you need to find is energy, actually. Yeah. I mean, it's an exhausting job. You need to be on it all of the time. You need to be in with your clients. You need to be experimenting, playing, learning all the time. Be prepared to be a student and a teacher at the same time. Not to think that you know it all and it's all done and I've got it all under control. I would suspect energy and kind of, a degree of humility are probably extremely important right now.
Yeah, agreed.
And I guess a tricky question to end with, because I know we're wrapping up time-wise, but given that we've got various CEOs and presidents in the room, what do you want your legacy to be in the US?
Well, I'm here to stay. I don't intend to. Sorry, Mum, if you're watching. I don't intend to go. Don't intend to go home. I'm extremely excited about being in New York, and I think for me the legacy is to build a new TBWA Shire Day, a modern, progressive, exciting agency with a strong creative reputation. And it is as simple as that for me.
And Chris?
That was a very good short ad that you put in there. I think
that was like native advertising.
That was native advertising. That was embedded.
Embedded.
Brilliantly
rock and roll.
I think there's a couple of things. I sort of worry about the title. The British are coming. I think they're here this week. I think they've been coming for a long time. I think for me, it's both one, an unbelievable privilege to run a 100-year-old agency and keep it growing, nourishing, changing, hopefully for the next 100 years plus. And I think the second is there's a cultural thing. Our role is very simple, I think, in lots of ways. It's like talent management. Our job is to help our talent do the best job they can do in the best possible way and remove barriers. That's what we're here to do. And obviously through that, win new business, grow our business, do better work, all the things that we know exist within the creative agencies.
Steve?
I suppose in 10 years' time, I'd like 5 people, when they were asked the question, who impacted and helped your career, to say, I was one of them.
Oh, that's nice.
And Kathleen, finally, from a Lighthouse perspective, where do you see that business?
Am I allowed 2 things? So the first...
No.
Actually, can I
That's it, headhunter.
She's looking at the time. She's saying, I've got a minute and a half, I'm on it.
While Kathleen's thinking about it, I've got one more.
She's not. She has the answer.
I've got the answer.
My boss has a dish named after him at a restaurant, so I'm going to aim to have a martini named after me somewhere in New York. That's what I should have.
My first is that I think the reputation of headhunters in any continent that you may be in is never always the best. And I would like the Lighthouse to be the headhunting firm that actually people really like to work with, want to be represented by, because we take a psychological approach to what we do and not just a craft skill. And the second thing I have to say is I'm not sure if I lean in, lean out. I'm not sure if I've even got to the second metric, never mind the third. But I would hope in my professional lifetime that women feel that they are as able to get into leadership positions and maintain and sustain them happily as men are today.
Great. And I think I'll answer that to the audience as well, which is, working for a great brand like The Guardian, I think I really want to see more of the great investigative journalism that we've seen over the last 9 months, and I think The Guardian is also now a great place for demonstrating how we can work creatively with brands to connect them with our audiences. And I think, there are projects like the one we have with EE, which is a great example of sort of combining a commercial imperative with creating an experience for audiences that really make a difference. I'll probably end with one final...
Is that native advertising, do you think? Or
Totally.
is that just... I think it's more obvious than native advertising.
Totally. But I think I'll finish with a small anecdote, which is I had a conversation with a few colleagues in the US office yesterday saying that I was going to be moderating this panel. And I said, why do you think it is that, some of us Brits get a good crack over here? And 2 of them turned around straight away and said, well, your accent alone adds 10 points to your IQ, so that's probably why.
I judged the Effies earlier this year, and as I'm sure many of you did, and the 90% of the case studies had British voiceovers, no matter where they came from. It could be DDB Chicago, and it would have a British voiceover. It's extraordinary.
Great. Well, please join me in thanking this great panel. Hope you've enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks, mate. Thank you. Now we know what native advertising is.
No, who's going to ask it? there. And I really think about that legacy that we've got to look after for the next generation. So of all the things I do, it's the thing that keeps me up most at night. How do we keep it right for the next generation? And one of the biggest things I've come across is whether we lead or serve. Do you serve as a trade body, or do you try and lead this market? So along with that question and many others, I've employed two advertising legends of the UK to join us today. I'd like to ask Paul and Tim to join me on the stage if you can. Oh, I need my clicker. I've got a clicker. Yeah, sorry. And I'll give you a bit of an insight to... Tim Lefroy is the Chief Executive of the Advertising Association. Typically, when we put this session together, we had lunch, so we're trying to take that over a glass of wine, so trying to keep that UK stereotype going. Tim was talking about his first role in media, and he called himself the Willy Wonka. So he used to work for a chocolate company. Latterly, he's taken over as the Chief Executive of the Advertising Association. And on my far right is Paul Bainsfair, the Director General of the IPA. He looks after all the agencies within the UK. Talking to Paul, he said his first job in media was for the Conservative government to get them into power in 1979. So it's going to be quite interesting talking to Paul about what he thinks of the current Conservative government and where we go with that. Now, to give you a bit of background, so PPA represents the magazine industry, the IPA represents the agencies within the UK, and that wrap round is with the Advertising Association to really support the advertising community. And I pulled this it's kind of like my cloud, really. I pulled these ideas out from the current websites. You can see those words, promote, protect, value, responsibility. So it's a lot of sort of good work that we need to do in terms of protecting and advertising the marketplace. Now, as I said, when we put this session together before, we've got 10 questions. So I've already taken 2.5 minutes explaining what we do. So what I thought I'd do is test you on the British advertising marketplace. So the first 3 questions are going to be for you. It's A, B, or C. So let's see how you get on. Now, the first question is, what is the collective number of years of the PPA, IPA, and Advertising Association? How long have they been in existence? So is it 283 years, 142 years, or 568 years? Come on, help me out. What do you reckon it is? Oh, I'll come to that at the end, so let's see how you get on. The second question, what percentage of the UK GDP does advertising represent? So, and the lawyers rang overnight, it's underpinned, rather than, because it's underpinned GDP. So, again, is it A, B, C? No, yeah, maybe we'll go on to the next one. So, how many jobs does advertising support in the UK? So, 550,000, 380,000, or 1.8 million? Well, I'll give you a clue. Hands up if you got all A's. Oh, no one. I was going to say the top prize was a weekend at Tim's manor house in England. So, yes, all A's are all correct. Who had mostly B's? A couple with B's is nearly there. You might make it in a secondary media market, and if you had C's, then you need to sort of really look at yourselves, really. But that's trying to give you a guide of the actual advertising marketplace. So with those 3 questions, I'm trying to sort of move on to some of the more important questions we face within the market. And I'm going to start with Tim, really. So I guess the biggest question of this morning is that do you think we've really made the case for advertising?
Well, it's a never... Good morning, everybody. It's a never-ending job. And I guess it's the same here. We get attacked in advertising terms for the things people imagine that we do. Make people too fat, make people too thin, get them drunk at the weekend, steal their privacy, commercialize and sexualize their children. And in the UK, certainly, and I guess here, there are NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and politicians who pick on those issues, and they use the issues to attack our activity. Yeah? We tend to promote what we do in terms of the value that we bring. to people, to consumers, in terms of keeping prices down and products, better and more innovative products, to businesses in terms of return on investment, to society in terms of the media that we underpin and the things that come as a byproduct of advertising, and our contribution to the economy. And our agenda in the UK, and we work as the Advertising Association across the agencies, the media owners, and the advertisers, and our job is to try to keep the environment where advertisers can make a fantastic return on investment in the UK as good as possible. The environment for media owners where ad-funded content can be made and monetized both here and overseas most effectively, and for the agency and services sector to keep us a global hub, if you like, against the competition from Mumbai and Sao Paulo, etc. So our agenda has been to try to get that case across. We launched this report in January. It's called Advertising Pays. Some of the stats that Julian quoted there talk about the UK's contribution of £100 billion to the UK economy, 500,000 jobs. The fact that our internet, our world-leading e-commerce market, £76 billion of e-commerce in the UK, is driven and supported by advertising. So we're doing the job. Will we ever sufficiently make the case for advertising? I don't know.
Okay. I mean, following on from my sort of big question, Paul, in terms of whether we kind of truly lead the market or do we serve our members, what do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's not an or, it's an and. I mean, we do both. So, for example, at the IPA, we've for a long time championed and led the way on advertising effectiveness. And we now have the gold standard, which is the IPA Effectiveness Awards, recognised around the world as the most kind of robust way of analysing and proving the effect of advertising. So in that sense, and we do other things of a similar ilk, we lead the industry, but we also serve our members, and like anybody would, we have legal services, we have training, we have information and insight teams, but we get really weird requests. I mean, last week, one of our agency members rang up and said, "We've got a bit of an issue, we need your help." One of their account directors in a Middle Eastern country, I can't say which one, had got drunk and had been arrested skinny dipping quite near the president's palace. And he actually worked on the business in the UK for that state. And the agency wanted to know if they could fire him. It was a really weird thing to call us about. And we had to advise him that he was in his free time, he could do what he liked, and they couldn't. But we suggested he didn't put any of this on Facebook or any social media. But, I mean, we get all sorts of weird, and we help agencies and serve them in that way, obviously. But mostly, I think, we do both. But it's the leadership stuff that's the most interesting, clearly. Mm.
I mean, going on to another point there, I mean, you have daily challenges. I mean, what's the single biggest challenge that you think your members face today?
I think it's coping with... I mean, if you just look at Advertising Week over here, most of the sessions have been about technology and new media platforms. And I think that getting the right talent, getting them trained and getting them sufficiently savvy with this new world that we're living in, and to be able to stay ahead of the clients, to be able to give the advice that we've always given and to be the leaders of the relationship between the consumer and the brand, is the biggest challenge. And we're doing lots to help in terms of training, but also in thought leadership in that area too.
I'd build on that. I'd say the biggest challenge for our sector, top to bottom, is talent. So it's actually at entry level. Kathleen made the point about women getting to senior positions in advertising. We are insufficiently diverse in terms of black and ethnic minorities, tend to be in what we call in the UK a middle class, white, professional, London-centric, certainly the agency sector. So at entry level, we have that issue. At the top, just for example, in organizations, getting CMOs into the C-suite is challenging. And we're finding people from other disciplines, from finance, etc., actually getting into boardrooms. And so working on our talent spectrum, top to bottom, is an important area.
I mean, just reiterating, asking another question on that, do you think, do we lead on that? I mean, do you think we do enough training as an industry? Do you think that we do enough in terms of development?
He does, and it's not our mandate.
Well, I think I mean, can you ever do enough? I mean, I think part of the problem is, you can lead the horse to water, but you know how the saying goes. So we put on a lot of training for different levels of advertising professionals. But a lot of the time, agencies are so stretched, I'm sure it's the same over here, that just releasing people, I mean, some of our most successful courses are sort of 3 or 4 day residential type courses. And it's proving harder and harder to get people out of the office, learning stuff rather than on the job dealing with the day-to-day stuff that they have to manage.
Okay. Now, I talked about, Paul, your first role was to get the Conservative government into power in 1979. I didn't think you looked old enough, but do you think, David Cameron, do you think our UK political leaders, do they get advertising? They get the industry?
Well, we're currently, I mean, the British in the audience may know this, we're currently involved in quite a big fight with the government because the way in which all the government communications used to be run in the UK was through the COI, which was a sort of world-class communications agency that the government owned and worked with all the agencies. And when the new government came in, age of austerity, they shut it down and said, we don't need this great encumbrance. We'll do it on a sort of day-by-day basis. And the result has been chaos. And they have decided to employ agencies on a kind of procurement basis that they would normally use for, battleships or safety pins. I don't know. And they're applying sort of commodity-based criteria to pick creative and media services, and it's hopeless. So we've been in quite a public row with the government and the Cabinet Office over that. So on that level, they don't. Ironically, when it comes to promoting themselves, the political parties, every time there's election, the first call they make is to an advertising agency. So they know how vital and how important what we do is for producing an effect, a behavioural change or awareness change amongst their audiences. So they sort of have a kind of, a kind of oddly schizophrenic approach to advertising. And to echo what Tim said earlier, their default position as politicians is they don't like advertising. They find it something that they can easily attack, get column inches for attacking, and it's sort of like a victimless crime. They don't think anyone gets hurt. And one of Tim's jobs and mine is to help them understand the unintended consequences of the economy if they do act like that and they don't think things through.
There's also, the supposition is that it's not well regulated. So Cameron came into power, and I've got this soundbite in my ears. We've got to stop this reckless and irresponsible marketing to children. The reckless and irresponsible, with the phrases he put with it. A year later, when he'd commissioned a review, and we'd said, okay, fine, tell us what your concerns are, and we will get the evidence. Everything we do is about evidence-based contribution to policy. So we brought the evidence to the piece. And the next thing I've got is a letter from Cameron saying, thank you very much for the work of the Advertising Association, and bringing this review to a good conclusion. So they walk in, advertising is very high profile. So if they don't like a category, we've got one of them, gambling, payday loans, they will attack it through the lens of the advertiser. And then it takes, and they certainly don't understand the sort of unintended consequence of bans. And they say, well, we'd like to ban advertising for high-fat, salt and sugar foods after 9 p.m. The consequence of that on advertising revenues into the media, which are supported by advertising, is massive. So they tend to shoot with the mouth first and ask questions. Yeah.
I mean, when we talked earlier, that was an issue that Paul was really passionate about. I mean, are there any other issues that you're really passionate about or would like to sort of...
Yeah, I mean, I'm passionate about trying to... I mean, Tim just mentioned the C-suite. I think that we've lost, from when I was a young man in advertising in the 80s, we've lost the connection with the chief executives and the chief financial officers of the bigger companies that we used to have. Not completely, I mean, in some cases we do still have them. But they are, by and large, I think, more motivated by short-term actions, share price. Many of them are only in the job for 2 or 3 years, and they neglect, or sometimes willfully, sometimes because they don't understand, the importance of building brands, which can take a long time and which will pay back over the long term. And I think that's an area I feel passionate about, and I think the industry should be more passionate about explaining the value of what we do in that sense. So that's an area we're working on, certainly.
Would you like to follow up on that?
Well, I keep my passions ahead, but my belief, the thing that we absolutely all should fight for is self-regulation. Because once statute gets its clammy hands on it, it cannot keep up with the pace of change that we have in our industries. And so self-regulation, and many of the audience, I'm sure, will be amazed or bemused by what's gone on in the UK over the regulation of the press, as presided over by Lord Justice Leveson. And this is the government trying to decide whether or not or how to keep a handle on the media. And the media is pretty vicious in the UK. And it's a tough place to be. But advertising has had effective self-regulation for 50 years in the UK. And there's a trust brand called the ASA. Probably our biggest problem in times of disintermediation and a lot of new brands and kids on the block is actually persuading them that the collective act of self-regulation, as opposed to the regulatory standards within firms, is valuable, and getting them to join up. But we absolutely need to preserve that.
Okay, that's really just interesting. But it's kind of our fourth day of advertising week. What have you enjoyed about the week? And is there one thing that you might sort of bottle and take home to the UK market?
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to what we heard from the guys earlier, I think that advertising, you're reminded when you're in the States, particularly New York, how big a deal advertising is. And I think Advertising Week, the impact of it on the city is greater than perhaps Advertising Week in Europe. It was only the first year, it managed to be last year, but I'd love to see us take back some of that chutzpah and some of that bigness in terms of communicating the importance of what we do when we have our event next spring.
Yeah, I mean, getting back and turning on the television and seeing a report from Advertising Week on Bloomberg TV and going, wow, hey, look, this is it's a public event. And advertising is probably not as confident, as perhaps seen as important and a natural process as it is here in the US.
Yeah. So what do you think that will be for Advertising Week Europe in 2014? Everybody's been talking about native advertising this week. What do you think are the main kind of content areas that we'll look to put together?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should try and get more creative platforms, because I think that is the mystical part of what we do. It's the bit that fascinates people, and I think that as much as we all want to know about technology and new media platforms, I think when we think about Advertising Week in Europe, we should make sure that they don't completely dominate proceedings, and we still look at ideas, how they work, why they work.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to see more advertisers, more clients there. I'd like to see. I will try and get the policymakers, the politicians involved, because when they understand us and understand the value that we bring, as opposed to the problem, what they kind of see what we do to people as opposed to what we do for people, society, and the economy. So I'd like to get more policymakers involved. I'd like to make it more public. Yeah. We've got some great festivals going on in London, but I'd like Advertising Week to grow in maturity and become one of those.
Okay, well that's we've got about a minute and a half left. I'd like to. It was our 10 questions, so I'd like to sort of ask the audience for that kind of last question. I'd like to sort of throw it out to ask. We are here to serve, and I was wondering what we should be caring about. So I don't know if I can ask that question of the audience. What issues should we be looking at ourselves?
We've got microphones.
We've got a question.
We've got a question. We've got a question. We've got a microphone. Or a point.
Go. Thank you. Yeah.
Is it working? Oh, you've got a big...
You've got a loud voice, isn't it? Yeah.
So, I think what you're saying about the Cameron government is an attack on advertising. At the time that the Tories took over, under the Labour government, COI spending had just tipped over and beaten Procter & Gamble, and the COI became the country's largest spender on advertising. And is that a sustainable position?
No, I mean, obviously that you're making a good point, and I think you need to distinguish between the COI and the client. The client was the Labour government, and they were using advertising to solve more or less everything, or promote their own policies. I mean, not to be political. And I think the incoming coalition saw that as a waste, but overreacted. They should have trimmed it back, certainly. but they should have kept it intact. I mean, it was a place that people came from all around the world to look at and examine as a perfect way of managing government communications. So to just close it down seems a little bit hefty.
Okay. Well, is there one more?
No.
Well, I'd like to end on a thank you. Again, thank you for attending the session today. I'd also like to give a big thank you to Matt Scheckner and his team. I think they've been fantastic this week. They've made us feel very welcome, and we hope to see you all in Advertising Week Europe in March. Thank you.
Special treat for us. So the 6 people coming up to do their kind of 5-minute mini keynotes, kind of a la TED Talks, are 6 of the most senior people in our industry in the UK. We have Claudine Collins from Mediacom, Dave Bonaguidis from Karmarama, Chris Goldson from ITV, our biggest broadcaster, Andy Hart from Microsoft, the very large Chris Maples from Spotify, and Rupert Turnbull, who's the publisher of Wired in the UK. I hope you very much enjoy what they have to say. It's their own personal perspective of what keeps them up at night, although Claudine tells me she was up at 3:30 this morning for no particular reason. So enjoy. I hope they'll share some very sort of special words of wisdom with us this morning.
So please excuse me. Can you hear me? I'm not sure the mic's actually working, so I'll stand here. Good morning, everyone. I thought, kind of with the exception of Kathleen, as the lone woman on the panel, I would bring a bit of colour. What keeps me awake at night? Yes, I have been awake since 3:30 this morning, so I hope I can kind of string a sentence together, although I'm sure the 15 espressos that I've had so far might help. When I heard the topic, I did think to myself, oh my God, Ad Week is not long enough for me to do this subject actually any justice. And being here, I have to say, for the first 2 days, it kind of perpetuated that feeling of, oh my God, there are words I've never heard of before, companies I've never heard of. But the last 2 days have actually given me quite a lot of comfort in that I'm realising that everybody is in the same boat. Great. Now, I know Kathleen told you that I'm from Mediacom. For those of you that don't know, Mediacom UK is the biggest media planning and buying agency in the UK. We bill $1.5 billion a year. There are 200 individual kind of client companies, and of those we probably deal with between 5 and 30 people in each of those companies, and there are 800 staff. So as you can imagine, every day something is kicking off with one of them, and there's always something that wakes me up that thinks, am I doing the right thing for that person? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zip through some of the issues, not personal issues, otherwise we would be here till Tuesday, but some of the issues that I have. And then I'm going to concentrate kind of on the main one. So Mediacom's been #1 in the UK for 10 years, and getting there was bloody hard, but actually staying there is even harder, especially when you have your competitors that are all very good in the UK nipping at your heels. It's a bit like losing weight. You know, when you actually kind of get to your goal weight, it was difficult, but trying to stay there is even harder. Trying to stay ahead of the game, it's something that at Mediacom we've always kind of talked about. In fact, one of our meeting rooms is ahead of the game. And new product development is key to that. But with everything evolving and kind of changing so quickly, the chances are that as soon as you've kind of developed a new product, it's no longer fit for purpose. Trying to make your business plan. If I'm honest, one of the things that does keep me up at night is Martin Sorrell's face. Because, and I don't mean that in a rude way, but, you know, he is brilliant but demanding and demands growth every year. And so kind of trying to make your business plan is difficult when a lot of that revolves around new business. And having 200 clients, I have to say we're precluded from actually pitching on a lot of clients. In fact, in 2012, 90% of pitches that came up in the UK, we couldn't pitch for because we had a competitor. Retaining clients, when you've always got an agency that will do it for cheaper. keeping talent in the agency when you have the fabulous Kathleen who understands where the talent is, even though we might try and hide it a little bit to the outsiders, where your competitors will pay big money and give big jobs to those guys. Also, kind of our business is changing now. So actually, we're looking at very different people coming into the agency, and we have to make some tough decisions about that because we can only have headcount at a certain number. And also giving people, I think Paul mentioned this, giving people time to train when there are so many demands on their time. I mean, we have to deal with so many media owners and understand what's going on in each of these media owners and clients demanding time, that actually giving people the time to train them and to develop is really difficult. And with that, the other thing that's very close to my heart is actually giving everyone in the agency a work-life balance. I don't want people to kind of not see their kids or young people being at work till really late. I want people to have a work-life balance. But I suppose, and it's no surprise, what really keeps me awake and my mind constantly whirring is thinking about the pace of change and how technology is changing the game. I'm sure kind of it's no surprise and everyone will probably talk about that. But for me, and it was something that Chris McDonald said, you know, I'm a woman in her 40s and I don't have children. And I think that not having children in this kind of like world is a disadvantage for many reasons, but kind of one of them is you don't actually see how young people interact with brands and with media. So I don't have kind of an Xbox Connect, although I'm sure I will, after Kathleen's speech about keeping up with technology, I'm going to get everything and kind of play, well, I was going to say play with it myself, but we won't go there. I think that is an issue. We're working kind of now in the information technology revolution. And in the same way that people struggled kind of with the agrarian and the industrial revolution, the same thing is happening. And it's due in part to the pace of change, but also the sheer scale of change and kind of the sheer scale of stuff around. When I started in media, oh so long time ago, it was a series of relatively kind of binary choices about where, frankly, to put an ad that had been produced. There were 2 commercial TV stations, some radio stations, some posters, and some national newspapers. So it was no wonder when I started, people used to come into work, go to lunch at 1 o'clock and not come back. It wasn't difficult. But as the volume of kind of brands and content and bits and bytes has grown exponentially, so's the complexity of the making choices within the ecosystem. Kind of only 10 years ago, people were talking about 360-degree integration, and yet now we're in a world where Boz talks about the speed at which advertising will be more and more native, a word that I hadn't actually heard either until about a week ago, and have heard so many times this week, it's kind of unbelievable. I get tutted at, and I'd be interested to know how many of you know this guy, but I get tutted at because I hadn't heard of an internet genius called Jamal Edwards, who is huge, absolutely huge, and has launched a TV channel, SBTV, that has more, that has more younger viewers than kind of our biggest commercial TV. And I suppose questions like, is TV still TV? Kind of, you've got YouTube, TMZ, SBTV and the like. Is it TV? Is it web? Do we even need to label these channels? But it kind of throws up so many questions. And I am a sponge. I do want to learn and I do want to kind of keep going. But that does kind of keep me up at night. And it's not just a challenge for agencies, though. It is for marketeers, content developers, media owners and platforms. I'm out of time. I've got a lot more kind of to say. But the one thing I will kind of end on is that I think marketeers are being told as well that this is the age of big data by anyone that can get in front of the mic. Well, it's not really helpful. You need to navigate between kind of the signal and the noise and understand what matters and be able to act upon it. It's not about big data. It's about the opportunity that's precision insight. it's not about kind of linear binary choices of where to put advertising. It's about understanding increasingly complex behaviour and creating kind of fit-for-purpose ideas that stretch across all the platforms. So kind of, is it really any wonder that I was up at 3:30 this morning? Thank you.
Hello. Great. Well, that's my conclusion. Could we start the first slide? That would be great. So I wonder where this is leading, and we could just discuss that if you like. Actually, whenever I come out, I always like to just get off my chest, because I know some of you are sitting there thinking, he looks like Jimmy Osmond. So if we can just clear the air, that'd be fantastic. We can all move on. So I've got 5 or 6 minutes to kill a monster. And it's going to be a bit of a hit and run, this one. I'm going to start by questions. So sort of show of hands. When you were a kid, who had a boogeyman? Who believed in a boogeyman? Was scared by a boogeyman? Not as many as I thought. Tim, I feel sorry for you. Me too. I had a boogeyman. He was dressed as a ringmaster, bizarrely, and I once saw him go across the landing outside my bedroom, and he had no eyes and really dirty teeth. So he's probably British. I imagine he was British. And actually, television has had a boogeyman itself for a number of years, and it's appeared in different forms. And I'm going to show you what I mean. So here we are, Oogie Boogie. And as far back as 1945, the boogeyman appeared in the form of Daryl Zanuck, head of 20th Century Fox, who basically, at that moment, said, questioned whether people would stare at a plywood box every night. 10 years ago, a bit more recently, our very own industry in the UK, represented by the Royal Television Society, predicted the death of linear television. So our own industry in the UK predicted the death of that. And this year, I think on a couple of occasions, Eric Schmidt said it's already happened. He was asked, is television going to die? He said it's already happened, it's already over. But we all know the boogeyman doesn't exist. And I'm not afraid of this boogeyman, because actually what keeps me up at night is the fact that I think we're entering a new golden age of television. So the reason I'm awake is I'm very excited. And I'm going to explain why in 3 quick points. First of all, these aren't my awake eyeballs. These are the eyeballs of the audiences, which are growing massively. And yes, television is changing in lots of different forms. As Claudine said, you know, there are different ways of interpreting what stands for television. But television viewing is in a fantastic place. So 10 years on from that quote from the RTS, we are now at a point where viewing is at a record level. For the 3rd consecutive year, television viewing is above 4 hours. I think we've got some way to go still to catch up with you guys. I think you're around about 5 hours. But 4 hours a day of viewing. And that expectation that linear TV is going to die, 90%, and it's actually plateauing now, 90% of viewing is live still. Shared moments. Actually, this is where second screen is really coming in to make a massive difference to people watching stuff live. 27 minutes more daily viewing than there was 10 years ago. And commercial viewing up 23%. The boogeyman does not exist. And in terms of what we can sell, we have 2.7 billion impacts to sell daily, up 44%. And to put it into context, for every 1 minute someone spends on Facebook, they spend 2 minutes on YouTube, they spend 60 minutes watching television. So that boogeyman ain't there. I also think we are telling better tales than ever. We're telling better stories, and this is where, I can't even do justice to this in the 30 seconds I've got for this slide. So how do I know that this is true? I'm watching Breaking Bad at the moment. My first objective this week is not to meet anybody else who's watching Breaking Bad, who watched the episode on Monday, because I've got to watch it tomorrow night, the moment I get home to see my wife. I did meet a couple of other people, and we just stood back and we just went, don't tell me anything, don't tell me anything. The content that's being created at the moment is absolutely astounding. And television is where the writers want to be. So moving from film into writing for television. In the UK, we're paying writers 40% more than we were paying them 5 years ago. And the opportunity over a long series to create really complex, exciting stories, they're finding much more attractive. And actually, the status of the writer is becoming even greater. Where they're actually becoming showrunners or exec producers, they have complete control. So what does that mean for advertising? I think it means that television has never been a better place for brands to tell their story. And advertising at its best influences, persuades, changes behaviour, and can tell marvellous stories. And television's never been in a better position to make that happen. Now, our job commercially is to turn, I hope you like this, it cost me $15, tales into sales. It's very clever. Thank you very much. It's called an ambigram, if you want to know. So our job is to turn those stories into sales. And one of the things about television in the UK is it's been very heavily regulated for some time, until the last couple of years. And it's meant we've been very restricted in terms of what we can do. So here's a good analogy in terms of how we used to have to operate. So you have a motel. So basically the motel, as the owners of the motel, we run the channels. We have advertising, so we have rooms. And before we could sort of do stuff together, actually we would rent those rooms out to people, to advertisers, and wouldn't ask too many questions about what was going on, and then take the money and thanks very much, and work quite separately. And that's now not the case. The changes in regulation have opened up opportunities for us. I know you've had it here for a number of years, but for us in terms of product placement, ways that we can deliver more contextual advertising and have far better brand integration in terms of how brands can work with our shows. And this is converting into amazing engagement. And I'm no Luddite, and as a broadcaster, we're no Luddites. In fact, I'm going to give you an example of how this kind of relationship really boosts the engagement levels we have with second screen. And I'm just going to show you one example. It's a recent example. So we have the X Factor on ITV in the UK. We have the second screen app. And within it, we have a new ad format we've created called Ad Sync. So the moment you're watching live TV and it goes to the ad break, Domino's pizza ad comes up on the television. So you're watching it on the TV. But at that precise moment, the app becomes a live ad, so it's synchronized absolutely perfectly. And here, what you're asked to do is to tap that pizza, very simply, 500 times in a minute. And it's quite difficult if you use one finger, but if you use quite a few, you can do it as this one does. Now, that's really simple. But what it does is it means you can then win, if you do that in the time period, you can win some free chicken wings with your order. You can get some garlic bread and stuff like that. Now, this isn't crazy stuff, but it's drawing people in. And I think what we're able to create now more than ever is what I would call irresistible transactions to get you to the point of purchase. And I'm really excited about the fact that television more and more is bringing people to the point of purchase. So that alone, the engagement levels, are off the scale. Of the over 100,000 ads that we served the first week that happened, the engagement with tapping that pizza was 72%. And 44% of people played it again, because they weren't very good the first time, but they wanted to play it. And nearly 30% of people went through to the website with a code to put those chicken wings in their basket. That's really, really exciting territory for us to get into. So is TV dead? Is the boogeyman alive? I say no. There's a great quote from a recent conference, again, the RTS, where Ed Richards, who's the chairman of Ofcom, our regulator, said this: television is actually the cockroach of the digital apocalypse. No matter how you try and stamp it out, it just kind of keeps going. It's going to inherit the earth. But as you've seen already, but I'd like to show you again, I'll be rather playful and suggest that actually television is the saviour of the digital apocalypse. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Dave Bonaguidi. I work at, I'm the founder and Chief Creative Officer at Karmarama, an independent creative agency in London. Obviously the question was what keeps us up at Wake at night. I know Claudine didn't want to get personal, but I'd like to. The first thing that keeps me up is my next door neighbour, who's this... it's not actually him, because I couldn't find a picture of him online, but this is kind of what he behaves like. He's the ringleader of a house of idiots where I live in an East London slum. And basically what they do is they have parties every night, and they haven't really grasped the concept of when you have a party in a garden and you're screaming your head off at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, that sound doesn't travel to the house next door, which is often 3 or 4 feet apart. I've just seen him putting in he's now constructing a hot tub in the garden, which means that these parties are going to continue into the winter, which is a wonderful thought. So he's on the death list. Hopefully he'll be dead soon. The next one's that my kids, Betty and Bosco, have got a pet lizard called Gary, and they feed him those little roachy locust things. And what they are, because they've got quite small fingers, when they feed him, the box lid opens and the animals escape. And I only noticed this the other night when I fell asleep on the sofa, and I woke up and it was dark. And it sounded like the Serengeti. We've got hundreds of these animals running around, and they all start chirping when it gets dark. So that's another real problem in my house. But the major problem that I worry about at night is what I call the vicious circle. And this is a problem that we have, I think, is a very predominant problem in London, which is that the advertising business isn't that interesting anymore. I don't want to piss anybody off or shock anybody, but I don't think it's actually that interesting anymore. When I started in the early 80s, it was a very, very creative business. And now it's become very data-driven. And I don't want you to think that I don't like data, because I think data is a fascinating addition to the creative process. But as a result, what's happened is it's become much more scientific than it ever was. And as a result, I think what's happening is there's a lack of vision and ambition from clients and from agencies, because what they don't understand is they don't understand how to harness this amazing technological leap that we've started, and all this data and how to use it. And what happens is we sort of go, oh, because it's not creative anymore like it was in the 80s, which was this wild Roman orgy, that now we have to sort of sit back and sort of think, oh, fuck, it's really boring now. I mean, there's nothing we can do about it, so let's just sit down and wait to die. There is also another problem, which is there's an enormous exodus of creative entrepreneurs. Advertising used to be the business that if you were creative in any way at all, you wanted to get into it, often because it was paid well, that it was a Roman orgy, and there was also, it was a kind of fun environment. Whereas now, because it is deemed to be a little more boring, creative entrepreneurs are off doing other things, and often they are doing their own thing. In the old days, it used to be something to be proud of when you worked for a company, and if you were freelance, it was because you weren't very good. Whereas now, if you're freelance, you're actually very clever because you're in control of your own life, and if you work for somebody, you have a pretty serious problem because you're kind of you're remaining relatively static in comparison to people who freelance. And this exodus of creative entrepreneurs, I think, is a real problem because nobody interesting is coming in, and then that leads to the problem that there aren't enough missionaries, and I think that the business has become very business-like. And again, it's no disrespect to what it's like here. I think the brilliant thing that you've harnessed here is that you understand it is a business. But I think you can still be a missionary in the business. And the problem is when you become too mercenary, it becomes a very unpleasant place to work and becomes very, very one-dimensional. And all of these things are kind of linked. And the issue we have is how do we break the cycle? And there are no interesting companies trying to do interesting things with clients that are going to attract interesting people to come into the business, and as a result, change the business and make it more interesting and better. And so I kind of asked, well, there are two ways of doing it. One, you get MacGyver in and see how he would do it, or you get this guy in and see how he would do it. And I think this one, there would probably require a lot more bloodshed. And I'm finished. I've still got 1.5 minutes left. Thank you.
How do you follow that? Can you hear me? There we go. Okay, morning everyone, thanks a lot. That's not my first slide again. That's giving away my gag as well. It's got, Can we go to the beginning? No, that's not the beginning. There you go. Morning everyone, my name is Rupert Turnbull. I'm the publisher of Wired UK. So we've all been asked the same question, what's keeping us awake? at night. And kind of when I asked myself that question, this is the video clip from Pretty Woman that came into my head.
Oh, God, the pressure of a name.
Yeah, the pressure. It's not Cinderfucking-Rella, okay? So the pressure of living up to a name like Wired. That's what keeps me up at night. The expectation that comes with a brand like Wired. So don't get me wrong. It's a great privilege to work on a business like Wired. It's fantastic. I absolutely love it. My chairman keeps telling me I'll never ever work on a hotter brand. The subtext of that, of course, is make me more fucking money. But it is a fantastic place to be. I get to be entrepreneurial, but at the same time, I've got a kind of lovely cashmere kind of comfort blanket that is Condé Nast behind me. So I love what I do, but it does come with it. It does come with it a certain amount of pressure. And for instance, as this chap here, the citizen of this great town, once said, "With great power comes great responsibility." Now, of course, I know I haven't got great power, but you kind of get the idea. With Wired, there's an expectation and kind of almost a duty, and that's to innovate. It's that we preach the gospel of innovation. It's even on our front cover this very month, in big, bold red letters, how to innovate. So we really can't be doing that, and at the same time, let our business stagnate. It's just not an option. But I just want to explore the word innovate. So I think, apart from native, it's probably the word I've heard most this week. So what's the actual definition? Well, it's the act of introducing something new. So what have we done at Wired UK that is genuinely new? Well, we have done some things, and I will talk about them, but actually, not a lot by the strict definition of the terms. Now, please don't take that out of context. I'm really not interested in headlines like this tomorrow. It's not a good career move, okay? But the point is that really, nothing really has been innovative that hasn't been done in the name of either religion or sex. Moses, well, he was into tablet publishing well before even Wired US was. Those great Sermons on the Mount preceded, believe it or not, even TED. And let's talk about content, the other buzzword of the day. Well, look no further than the Renaissance, right, as a client-funded advertising campaign, the client being the Catholic Church, and of course, Leonardo and his pals in the Karmarama role. And sex, well, where do you start with sex? Here's a lovely example of kind of behavioral targeting, geo-targeting. This is a brothel owner who has positioned his brothel on the top there on the first floor. Above that, that's a tavern. So he understands his customer and he's done his research very well. And let's not even go into the way the sex industry has led the way in monetizing digital content. That's kind of really a long-winded way of saying there's nothing new under the sun. Does that mean that we have to stop striving to break the mold? No, of course not. The point is that we need to learn from previous innovations, but we also need to focus really on kind of growing, doing what's right for the brand and growing the business instead of obsessing about what's new. So we think of our endeavors at Wired as an evolution, and that, again, in the strictest term, use of the kind of Darwinian term, changing from a simple organism to a complex one, and a real survival of the fittest. So it's not about kind of shedding our skin and starting again. It's about evolving. We landed on the planet, certainly in the UK, in May 2009 as a print magazine and a kind of companion website. We were effectively an organism that was not fit for its environment. And so we had to evolve, or we would have been extinct pretty damn quick. And evolve we have, and this is now what our brand looks like. Genuinely multi-platform. But importantly, in the middle is the DNA of the brand, which is the content. Okay, so, it's very easy to forget what your DNA is. And it's incredibly important to remember that as you evolve. If you're going to avoid mistakes like this, which is what came up earlier, a very good corn-based, cheese-flavored snack business that went into the lip balm industry. Cheesy lips, I don't think so. And I think everyone's seen this before. sexy Bic pants. Not really. But it would have been really easy, genuinely easy for us, and we did talk about it at one point, of bringing out an energy drink, you know. It would have been easy for us to make that assumption that we could get into that business. But thankfully, we've managed to avoid that so far. So now you can access Wired content still as a printed magazine, a very haptic solution to our content distribution, but also now, of course, as a digital magazine and a number of tablets. As of next month, announcing it here, we are publishing the whole magazine on an iPhone, completely redesigned for the screen. So that's kind of that's how you can access us monthly, weekly in podcast form, of course 24/7 online and all our social activity, and 24/7 through our news app, and then annually and at other times during the year at our conferences and events. And also, finally, annually at our annual trend report. So, you know, the point is that, you know, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, we'll find you, and we will feed your brain. And that you doesn't necessarily now only mean you, the consumer. It also means, in our case, you, the business, because I guess the one thing that we've done, I think, that's genuinely innovating in our industry is launch a consulting business. I don't know of any other major consumer magazine brand that's done this. We have. We did it just under 2 years ago. And really, it was we felt there was a need. We didn't know, definitely, that there was a need, but we were kept being asked to go into businesses and share our insights. So in a kind of classic entrepreneurial way, we jumped out of the plane and kind of assembled our parachute as we fell. Thankfully, there was a need, and in the last 18 months to 2 years, we've delivered consulting projects for all of these brands. And actually, the business has kind of formulated itself into these 4 pillars. So this is now a business that didn't exist 2 years ago, that's now delivering a genuine number to the bottom line. And none of the rest of the activity is vanity publishing either. So through it, we've grown our community exponentially, and thankfully the commercial revenues have come with it. We've doubled our commercial revenues in the last 2 years. And that's through partnerships that with businesses that really kind of understood our community and got under the skin of every single one of our touch points. Businesses like Cisco and Samsung and Shell and IBM and Jaguar and Barclays Wealth have all done that. So my final point, really, there's lots that we're doing at Wired, and lots more to come. You know, we're seriously getting into the education space. So if you've ever wanted to do a Wired MBA, your dreams may come true. We've just done a data hack where we've put a whole bunch of developers and thrown our data at them. So we haven't got the results back at that. We don't know what's going to come out of that, but I'm sure some serendipity will come out of it. So this is what we really kind of, I think of. I don't know if this is a quote by Churchill. I couldn't find who said it. It sounds like something he would say. So let's just say he did it. So Churchill said, "Bite off more than you can chew, and then chew like buggery." Thank you very much.
Morning, everyone. How are you doing? So I'm the guy that Kathleen said she would eat her hat if I didn't finish in time. So I'm going to share the responsibility with all of you. So when we get to 20 seconds to go, and I'm still talking rubbish, will you please start counting down so we can make sure that I stay to plan? You may also, those of you that know me well, ask the question, why, as a big Arsenal fan, and that does keep me up at night sometimes, although not this season, have I got a Portland Timbers football scarf on? Football would be soccer for those Americans amongst the audience that don't know a real sport from a girls' game. And the answer is the beloved Doug Zander, who has the 4th best hair in advertising, and I'd love to know who 3, bet me £50, real money, to a charity of my choice that I would wear the scarf for how long? However long I'd like. So £50 to the NSPCC. Thank you very much. Thank you, Doug, for donating to the NSPCC. Now you can see why Kathleen asked me to stay to time. It was very hard to come on 5th
after such fabulous speakers beforehand. So I decided not to write anything until about 2 minutes ago to see what would come out of my mouth. And I looked around and I saw that we were in this great venue. And I thought about rock and roll, and I looked at George Harrison, and I thought, what a brilliant moustache. I wish I had one like that. And now I'm going to lie awake at night and wonder whether I should grow the beard back, because facial hair is a very important thing to have in media. But I then thought to myself, I joined the media department of an agency in 1987, which makes me kind of quite old. And I thought I was going to be the oldest person on the stage, but I'm pleased to see that I wasn't. And but it got... Sorry, Tim. But it did get me thinking about life stage, because I kind of got to that midpoint of my career. And you kind of 20, 25 years in, and then you think, oh, I'm at midpoint. Does that mean I've got to work for another 25 years? Well, I bloody hope not. Just a quick check. How many Microsoft people are in here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Anyone from corporate comms? No. Okay, good. And it's just being recorded. Oh, shit. And it got to a life stage where actually, in a lot of the meetings now, I'm the oldest person in the room. And a lot of you will, please God, get to the situation where you be the oldest person in the room. And you kind of start to look at life a little bit differently. You kind of look back and say, I made a few mistakes, I got a few regrets, nothing too much that keeps me up at night. And you kind of think, how do I lay down my legacy going forward? And I was thinking about this morning after an excellent night's sleep, thank you very much, because I didn't eat any MSG in the Chinese that I ate. And MSG kind of keeps me up at night, because you get to a certain age in life and then your stomach kind of plays strange things with you. But I turned on the TV, put on Bloomberg, because it's kind of entertaining in the morning, and you go, did you hear what I just said? Bloomberg's entertaining in the morning. That's definitely a life stage thing. And the pension ads come on. There's two types of ads on Bloomberg. There's the, we can invest better than you, and we will charge you less commission. Fabulous, really interested in that. And then I'm starting to think about pensions. Who would have ever thought Andy Hart would think about pensions? And then you start to think about, how am I going to spend the rest of my life? So bringing that all back together, it kind of came back to something that's quite interesting and important to me, which is R&R, which it used to be rock and roll, and I've kind of done my rock and roll years, well, nearly all of them. But the R&R I was thinking about is responsibility and relationships. And for someone that's been in media for 26 years and bumped into his first ever boss last night at the Friars Club, which was great fun, and he reminded me that I had to write an essay to get the job. So I was moving from selling advertising space on a computer magazine into an agency. Because agencies in those days, as Dave will remember more than most, was rock and roll. When we were in the 80s, agencies was rock and roll, another R&R. And I had to write an essay on how will the forthcoming Sky TV change the shape of TV. And I wrote it, handwritten, 4 pages, handed it in, and he gave me the job. I asked him last night, does he remember the essay, did he read it? He said no, but I was the first person ever to hand something in on time in his agency. So I got the job. But it is amazing that still, 25 years later, we're at that same nascent stage, where we think digital is mature and we think it's really sort of kind of grown up. I don't think so. I think that it's just about taking its training wheels off. And I think that the responsibilities and relationships that we have are fundamentally changing. The relationships between people, and I look at my kids, and I really hear what Claudine's saying. When I look at my kid, the type of relationship that they have is changing because data, information is atomizing. Time is getting shorter, relationships are digital. And I think that changes how we interact with each other. And as a guy that's kind of post-digital, I'm finding that difficult to struggle with. Then I look at the responsibilities we as an industry have, where we provide so much information to so many people. How do we really look after that? Like, are you going to count for me? And the answer to that is we have to start with our children. And we have to make sure that they're protected. And there's a fantastic charity that is doing an enormous amount to help children understand their rights and protect themselves on the internet. And in the UK, that's the NSPCC with the Now I Know campaign. Doug Zander gave 50 quid to it today. I ask you to do the same.
Morning, everyone. How's the energy levels in here? Pretty good? I feel like the aircon's been turned up. Look at that. Rock and roll at that. I'm delighted to be here on stage at the Hard Rock Cafe. I'm Chris from Spotify, as that probably tells you. The centre of so much cheaply bought memorabilia in the music industry, which is good, and also enormous burgers. So two of my big passions. That's good. So what keeps me up at night? Come on. That is good. Thank you, Max and Jessica. As Andy sort of slightly paraphrases there, I believe the children are our future. Come on, you know the words. So, you know, thinking about my children keeps me up at night, but in the last few weeks, the thing that's kept me up at night repeatedly at 3 o'clock in the morning, every morning, is my wonderful fiancée, who is in the audience, but I won't point her out, she's just there. Thank you. We get married in 2 weeks' time. We'll be asleep, and then she'll sit bolt upright at 3 o'clock in the morning and go, I've figured out the table plan. What? Okay. So that's one of the things that keeps me up at night. The thing that really keeps me up at night, though, is working at a company like Spotify. We are dealing with something that is so precious to everyone. We've done 100 surveys in various different countries where we ask people what is the source of entertainment that they are most passionate about and that they couldn't live without. And music always comes out number one in everyone's survey. So we know that when we're dealing with someone's musical content, musical curated memories, really the kind of mixtape for the new generation in the form of playlist, we know that we're dealing with something that's incredibly precious to them, and therefore we have to be gentle with it, and we have to be kind to it, and we can't disappoint people, because what has become increasingly apparent to me, and I think to our business as well, is that in this world of technological advances, consumers get technology far quicker than we ever give them credit for it. And the moment that consumers understand that something is possible, they demand that you do that. And if you don't do that, someone else will do it for you. So what I mean by that is that we launched our business about 7 years ago in Stockholm. It was just a purely desktop business. And then we very quickly launched on mobile as well. And then consumers realised that they spend loads of time social, so we had to integrate with Facebook, and then they watch their TVs become different things now, so we integrate in smart TVs and all that sort of stuff. So the moment that technology creates opportunity, we have to follow. We have to keep up pace, because actually consumers get it far quicker than we ever give them credit for. And devices and pieces of technology and the utilities that people have spent their life using now have totally different meaning and totally different opportunity to use. So the TV that we've spoken about already today used to just be the thing that we watched in the corner of the room to watch television programmes. It's now a smart TV. People surf the internet on it. People watch or use apps like Spotify on it. So, and all of these devices are kind of merging into one. And we're seeing already, you know, the development of things like Google. Has anyone seen anyone wearing the Google glasses? Has anyone seen anyone wearing the Google glasses looking cool? Yeah. Sorry, Mark. Yeah, Mark will come on to... Mark, you look cool in anything, though. And so the thing that really keeps me up at night is trying to keep up the pace of where we need to put our product to ensure that consumers, A, get the best experience of it, and B, that we keep up with their expectations. So as I talked about, we integrate in smart TVs. We're built into every single speaker system there is now. We deliver 50 billion impressions a month on Facebook through posts. Everyone happy with their musical choices being posted through Facebook? A great friend of mine, Eamon, is sat in the audience here, and one of our very close friends is a guy called Trevor. It's just a brilliant name anyway, but I get to see what everyone's listening to on Spotify. I mean, I saw something quite recently that said, Trevor Barry has been listening to a lot of Justin Bieber recently. And that's obviously because he's got a 12-year-old daughter and she's been listening to that. So we see what we listen to. We also build into cars now as well. So the top-end Volvo cars now we launched at the car show last year. The dashboard is actually an Android device. Spotify's built into it, controlled through the car, through your voice, whatever. And keeping up with that kind of pace, because people expect us to be in cars and they expect us to be on TVs and they expect us to be in social media. And that sort of keeps me up at night. I'm going to show you a very brief video. Not been enough videos today, I think. It's quite early in the morning, so I've got a few videos and a bit of music. So we're going to do that. 1 minute 10, we're definitely going to run over on this. But before I show you the video, I want to just sum up got to keep ahead of the game. Sharpest pencil in the box. Quite like that image. Now I'm going to show you a video.
Well, some they say it's not even funny, and there you stand, not even trying. They say it is in line with the agent, sometimes noise is just your mind. But the lesson is vague and the lightning shows you deal with your mind on the moor. And how something with the sun is just different since they shook the earth in 1904.
So what that really shows is that it wasn't enough for us just to be on lots of different devices. We had to have a seamless experience from one to the other. So now, through Connect, if you're listening on your buds, you go into the house, you can put it straight onto your speaker, you go into your bedroom, go through the garden. So stuff like that, keeping up to pace on that sort of technological development is really important to us. Another thing, and someone touched on it earlier on, is this whole world of data and big data. And apparently big data is the new, whatever the old big data was. I think that's really interesting. What I find interesting is some of the stuff that we've found out about our business. And we realise that music reflects what is happening in the world generally. And what's happening in the world generally has an impact on what you're listening to. And I did a talk in Cannes earlier this year which talked about some of the things, big, important events in the world and how that had affected people's listening habits. So things like the Boston bombing and when Thatcher died and stuff like that. But one thing that's really interesting that I put out of this is that we have... And I find this odd. We have 850,000 playlists in the service with the title Funeral or Death in the title. And so we now know what the top streamed song at funerals is. Anyone care to take a guess? No. I mean, you know, I feel like the energy levels are pretty good. I'm about to bring them right down. Yeah. Now, one thing I have to apologise for is that I can't rush through this slide because the build's so wrong. So I'm going to show you the top 10 songs that are played at funerals. But I think we can just indulge ourselves in a bit of Eric Clapton. No one's ever played this in a presentation before. There we are, top 10 songs. So, write them down now, get them prepared. Andy, you've got about half your life left, I think you said. There we go. So, music reflects what's happening in life generally. Music has an impact on everything we do. But music still has the ability to surprise and delight us. Who knew? Does anyone know who this is? Yeah, so, last year, or 2 years ago, was Gangnam Style became the biggest hit in the world. This is the biggest stream single at the moment, most viewed video on YouTube, I think, at the moment as well. I'm going to show you a little bit and then I'm going to say thank you. It's genuinely extraordinary, this. It's a Norwegian TV children's book.
Dog goes woof, cat goes meow, bird goes tweet, and mouse goes squeak. Cow goes moo.
If you know the chorus, please join in.
And the elephant goes toot. Ducks say quack, and fish go blub, and the seal goes ow, ow, ow. But there's one sound that no one knows.
Bring it home, Hard Rock.
What does the fox say? What the fox say? What the fox say? Happy, 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 ho, happy, happy.
We could stay here and watch that all day. It's fantastic. You find it on YouTube, find it on Spotify. That's some of the stuff that keeps me up at night. I'm probably about 5 minutes over, but you've got to see some videos. Thank you very much.
That does not that, Queens. Good morning, everyone.
Should we squeeze up a bit?
Are we good? Can we squeeze in?
Not too close.
All right. Good morning, everyone. And I just, by the way, checked the streaming numbers. There are 84,000 people around the world watching this.
No.
So you have made a good choice here, but there's a lot of folks around the world who are watching. Our streaming numbers are great. It's all, you'll be able to watch it next week. It'll all be on demand. I'm Matt Schechner. It's my great privilege to serve as Executive Director of Advertising Week here as well as over in London. And I would be remiss going another second without thanking all of our colleagues from the UK who have come over here en masse. And we've seen you all over by day and by night, and we're thrilled to have you here. So this will be the closing segment. One of the things that we did in London that was really terrific is we had a leadership breakfast series at Ronnie Scott's. Many of you know, all our UK friends certainly know, Ronnie Scott's is an iconic jazz club in London and Soho. And we did a wonderful breakfast there, and it was the inspiration of the thought leadership that came out of there that led us to this closing segment here, our Ronnie Scott's Leadership Roundtable. So let me have each panelist introduce themselves. Simon, why don't we start with you?
Hi there, I'm Simon Rees. I run a company called Digital Cinema Media. So your equivalent is NCM, NMC, NCM. So we do the advertising before the film. For this debate, my previous history is running media agencies. I ran Mindshare a few years ago, so sort of playing the game from both sides of the equation.
Rupert Staines, I'm Managing Director for Radium One. We're a US business, but I run the EMEA operations for us. I've been in this space for a long time, it seems, digital. I've been in it since '98, which is very early doors, especially in the UK.
Mark?
I'm Mark Howe. I'm Managing Director for Google's agency sales business across the UK and Northern Europe. I've been at Google 7.5 years, and before that I was 20-odd years in TV. So I've crossed the divide and therefore have a pretty strong opinion on both sides of the fence.
Great. All right, well, Mark, let's start with you. The consumer in control has never been more true than it is today. And that emergence of a true one-to-one relationship, that promise has really been delivered on. What do you see there, and how is that redefining the relationship between brands and consumers?
Yeah, great question. The consumer, as actually I think Chris said, the consumer's ahead of advertising. I actually think that what's happened in the last few years, certainly since I've been at Google, is that you could probably say technology has ambushed advertising. I think because the consumer keeps up with technology faster than the advertising business, actually the technology has ambushed what media and creative agencies do, and they're constantly chasing this consumer one-to-one. I find it staggering and actually really disheartening that in the UK we've got 75% smartphone penetration. The consumers have moved to mobile. Consumers are on tablets. One in three of us have tablets. 1 in 4 of us are three device users, 3 or 4 device users, and yet only 40% of the top 250 advertisers in the UK, and I'm guessing that's the same globally, have an optimized website for mobile devices. It's shocking. Consumer is changing the game. Advertising simply isn't keeping up, and this lethargy that exists within media and creative agencies and advertisers, I think, is actually pretty shameful.
Now, Rupert, we know a lot more now. How does that impact, and can you sort of extend what Mark was just saying. But we have so much knowledge now.
Yeah, I mean, I agree entirely with Mark that the consumer's ahead. I'd argue the consumer's actually ahead of technology, because as consumers we don't really think technology, we just do it, and we consume, and we've all become publishers, regardless whether you're a brand, a publisher, or a consumer. So technology is enabling that change of communication. That language is different. Digital is the language. Web is just the transport system, and you've now got social and mobile, which is just enabling us to put the signposting and the sort of highway code into place. And mobile is just a vehicle, right? It's not a channel. So I think businesses are way behind, and I think advertising has done a disservice. If I can be kind of slightly confrontational here, I think agencies are behind the curve, and I think agencies are making a big mistake if they think that they are going to be in some part the technology makers. I think they need to partner, and I think they need to open their eyes, and I think they need to open clients' eyes to the opportunities.
So we've heard lethargy, we've heard disservice. What are the agencies missing?
You don't want us to be all nice, do you?
No, absolutely not. What are the agencies, why aren't they getting it? I mean, you have so much technological horsepower between the two of us in terms of fueling them with intelligence that they can act upon. Are they just not getting it?
Is that
Yeah, sure.
Actually, hang on a second. I think both these guys are being really harsh. I think there's an enormous place for great, big brand advertising. The key is, where do you show that great, big brand advertising? And obviously, being a cinema guy, I'm going to say the cinema pretty first. But I think big brand advertising is still very important. And consumers are engaged in that. I think the key is how great big brand advertising can be brought to life through new media. And so I think that's a very important sort of point to make. So sorry, I just wanted to sort of square up this. I don't want to be too old-fashioned, but
it's okay.
I will be. I think on the agency front, just to sort of hijack that point as well. The agencies are trying, but things are running at an incredible pace, and things will keep running at an incredible pace. So to keep adapting is a massive challenge. So it's not only agencies, it's the brands as well. And I think sort of pausing and thinking, and sort of thinking about how they address and create a robust, sustainable strategy using both brands and new media, I think, is the key equation that both agencies and advertisers now face.
Let me just come back on the point about agencies, because actually I don't want to get shot by the thousands that are maybe viewing this outside the building. Because the issue is, if you're trying to put it from a UK and American US perspective, actually, if you think about this little island of ours, this little British island, we think of it as a landmass, this tiny little island off the coast of mainland Europe, and yet it's the single most innovative and largest digital ad market anywhere in Europe. It's only, to Americans, $6 billion pounds, or sort of $10 billion spent on advertising online in the UK. May not sound like a lot, but it's a third of the ad market in the UK now. So actually, how have we got there? Well, we've got there because actually the Brits are trusting, and they like to queue, and they don't like paying too much for goods and services, so they put stuff on credit card and buy stuff online. But actually, it's largely because of the creative services industry in the UK and the innovation of the agency ecosystem in the UK. It's not necessarily the large, big six global networks so much. It's been stimulated by entrepreneurial SEMs and entrepreneurial startups that have really made online advertising, a third of all advertising in the UK. So it's a phenomenal business, and actually we lead Europe. And actually, I'd argue that the agency ecosystem in the UK is leading the world in the way that we innovate in digital, both creatively and in media strategy.
Yeah, that whole embrace and integration of technology, clearly everybody is evolving and trying to keep up with it. But to your point, and I remember Paul Bainsfair was kind enough to have me at one of the board meetings, and you are the most awarded nation in the world in creative awards you know, you're not the largest in population, but based on what you win, just as in the Olympics, you guys were number one, you know, based on the size of your country relative to winning. So clearly, creative industries and embrace of creativity is something that the UK does quite well.
I think, and again, I don't want to backpedal on the comment necessarily. I just want to kind of put it into...
You are. We're all back.
No, I want to
You
put
see this full retreat?
I want to put it into context. I think there is a mistake to kind of put agencies all into one bag.
Right.
The creative agencies, what I would call the classic Mad Men era, I think is still fantastic. And creativity and ideas are right at the forefront of advertising, and advertising, we all know, is massively important to economies and businesses everywhere. I would rather land it at the idea that the way in which business is done in media has changed. Fundamentally, it's changed. You know, the canvas on which we now dance with digital is entirely different. And I'll challenge all the TV guys and say, TV is an amazing medium, but TV is just going to become another device on that canvas.
Right.
Nobody's talking about the canvas and addressing that and consulting with their clients about how that is going to change their businesses. I've sat with a number of CMOs and big clients globally over this week and over the previous few months, where the conversation is how marketing is becoming business. And that fundamental change, that ecosystem change, I think changes the game, changes the business rules. So, you know, clients have to pick up the pace and have to adapt quicker, and agencies need to be the ones helping them.
Now, Simon, your medium allows on a big screen for big creative ideas to really flourish. As everything moves to devices of all shapes and sizes and every conceivable location, how do you see the challenge being met to do great creative work on the small screen as well as the big screen?
Yeah, we've got quite a unique challenge because, and I hope everybody here agrees, what we don't want to do is start to sort of mess up what happens in the cinema because, people turn up there, they want to go and watch a film, and, that's an amazing experience. It's one of the best experiences. So we need to, and brands and advertising before, that's very important, and how we sort of energize that, I think, is a continual challenge in creating this entertainment. I think the key challenge for us is how we use the mobile, smartphones to bring more people into the cinema, but then also to how we propagate revisits and visits later, how we engage with brands and the consumer after the visitor experience. So we're developing an app at the moment that sort of helps to enable that. But I think the most important thing about cinema is, it's been around a long time. It's a very successful formula. Audiences are still very strong. Film is very powerful and still it's very buoyant. So we don't want to sort of mess around with that too much. So anything we do has got to be sustainable. So sort of we've coined the phrase, which it's about sustainable innovation. And that's really to sort of use smartphone and use the second screen to enhance the experience and then take it into the whole social spectrum as well. So it's a very active conversation, big investment at the moment. But critically, we don't want to mess around with that experience when you turn up and you spend your £10 or $10 watching a film.
I'll just add on creativity, and certainly audio-visual creativity, whether it affects cinema, whether it affects TV. I think what we're now seeing, certainly with creative agencies in the UK, and I know it's the same in the US, there's a whole generation, and so many people, Chris and the likes, and Andy talked about their kids. I've got 3 teenage kids, and sure, so I understand how they view media and how they view audiovisual media, and they live their lives on YouTube. And actually, what we're now spending so much time is talking to creative agencies is to how they can start to build creative that talks to the consumers through the lens of the vehicle by which it's being viewed, and through YouTubers. So we're spending a lot of time getting those guys that have got 1, 2, 3 million subscribers to their YouTube channels, bringing them in, getting to meet with clients, getting to meet with creative agencies, to build creative that actually the next generation of consumers understand in a very much more a one-to-one one-to-one relationship, and it is changing the consumer. We see that with the Dove Sketches stuff. We've seen it so many times with so many other very high quality, low cost creative that sits on YouTube and builds phenomenal experiential advertising.
Let me ask one more question, then we'll do a little quick fire round. Targeting is a very big topic this week, and we had an interesting seminar The Guardian hosted for us earlier in the week on privacy, and talked about Snowden with Alan Rusbridger. We know so much. Where do you see the line in terms of acting on intelligence and where we might be pushing up against or going over that line?
Tough one. I'm slightly biased in that, I firmly believe, as you probably understand already, I firmly believe that the future of media is an audience buy, it's not a media buy. And the reason for that is because of technology and because of audiences being primarily digital in the way that they consume. So the ability to target audiences down to a very granular level is incredible. I think there is a fine line, and I think that fine line probably comes back to the point of creative and content.
Right.
You get content right, then you can target it right down to the individual. You get that one-on-one nirvana. You get content wrong, or you sort of just misread the situation. Someone told me an example the other day. Personalization and technology is such a big thing of the future that you do risk, in this one particular instance where this girl was getting a particular piece of content, because apparently the millennial group, 56% of them are already tracking their own health on devices. Right? So that's incredible. And that's incredible for the health industry. But in this one particular instance, a girl received a piece of communication, an ad or whatever, for pregnancy, and it was really personalized. And her father saw it, had no idea she was pregnant. So, there are going to be lines that are crossed, and I think we're going to have to be, take real responsibility as we move. To Tim's point earlier, the responsibility we have as an industry is very, very important.
Okay, so let's just do one
Well,
quick
I'll just
round.
add on that, though.
Please.
I'd like to add on that, because I think we've gone past we haven't lost the era of mass messaging, but the sort of noble art of distraction that was advertising in yesteryear. And I quote Richard Eyre at Adweek Europe earlier this year. In those days, you're playing out a message to those that can do nothing about it at the point of receiving the message. They're in the home, they're on the tube, they're in their car, can do nothing about it. We now talk about remarketing, which is effectively reaching people when they're in the right frame of mind, or they have actively been looking for something, and remarketing. I actually think remarketing is almost old hat, and this might sound a bit wanky, which is a quaint English expression, which is that actually I think it's real marketing. I think real marketing, remarketing of today is what we'll think of as just real marketing in a couple of years' time, which is genuinely getting a one-to-one relationship with a consumer, understanding exactly what their needs are in time and space and location. And location through GPS and mobile devices is the key to this, that it means it's not so intrusive. It's actively something that they want at that point.
Right.
And actually, it will come down to a whole new skill of buying, whether that's programmatic or whether that's through the skill of an individual buyer, to stop the mistargeting of that remarketed ads to individuals. The worst thing is, pre-Christmas, you're going to buy your partner some Tiffany jewellery online, and of course, for the next 3 months, you've tried to do that I would do it on New Christmas Eve, obviously, but you can do that prior to Christmas, and for a month leading up to it, that your systems in the house are bombarded with Tiffany jewellery ads.
Right.
You're giving the game away a little bit.
Right.
So that's back down to quality of the buy.
But I think in part that the other layer to that, which is changing, certainly we're seeing it in digital terms, is we've been very much used to the transactional model over the last 10 years in digital, which has been our own worst enemy. The fact that we can be hit around the head with a stick because your click-through ratio wasn't right is kind of ridiculous. So I think we're moving much more to an engagement model. I think that's really interesting. I think that's where social and mobile really begin to kind of overlap.
Simon?
Yeah, I think for traditional media, targeting and niche targeting, accurate targeting is one of its biggest challenges, and that's the common sense response to it. But I think where media are increasingly getting their heads around, they're understanding their audience more now, which is fantastic, but they're also increasingly more cleverly using new media, be it the mobile, etc., to support their targeting and their understanding about their audiences. And so that's where I think Google Google created massive disruption in the whole concept of targeting 10 years ago, and that's proliferated ever since. But I think other media are now beginning to pick up a lot more. Maybe they'll stay behind the curve of Google and other and traditional online brands, but I think that traditional media are now catching up a little bit. And we've heard some of that here this week, actually.
All right, I got the wrap sign. Closing question. 10 years ago, there was no YouTube. Gmail was just introduced. There was no Spotify. There was no Windows Mobile. There was no Twitter. There was no Tumblr. Facebook was only on the Harvard campus. Look out a year from now. What do you think we'll be talking about in 1 year? Simon, what will be the big topic in 2014?
Flippin' heck. That's a really tough one. I think we'll be talking about all of those brands, those vehicles, but I think we'll be talking about big content still.
Big content.
Yeah.
Roop?
Hopefully about us winning the World Cup, but probably not. It's a very hard question. I really hope, and this goes to Mark's point at the beginning, I really hope that mobile, it becomes central to clients' marketing thinking.
Mainstream. Mark?
Okay, so total plug, an advert, Ads Week. I think we'll be talking about Chromecast. Chromecast, the $35 widget that you stick into your HDMI socket in your TV set that allows you to sling everything, providing you've got a decent wireless connection, broadband wireless connection. You're able to sling any content from your mobile, your desktop, your laptops to your large TV screen that will completely change viewership in the house, in every single room. At $35, I only came here to New York, not just to flatter Matt, actually, and see you guys. It was to try and buy myself a Chromecast because I can't get them in the UK yet. And we sold out within 24 hours. We're trying to stock up for Christmas. But if any of you can get me a Chromecast, then I'll love you forever.
Well, listen, I want to thank you, and I want to thank all our friends. We have tremendous, and I'm not empowered to speak on behalf of America, but we have tremendous admiration and respect for what you do, whether it's Paul's group at the IPA, leading the way forward. You've got the best of a lot of things. I think what Rupert does at Wired UK and what Chris and the team at ITV do is phenomenal. What Chris and his team at Spotify, Andy at Microsoft, Tim leading the way in so many ways. And you have the best journos in a lot of ways. We love The Guardian. We love Campaign. We're avid readers and supporters. So I want to thank all of you so much for being here. This was an awful lot of fun. And we'll see you in London, March 31 to April 4. And a thank you, of course, to my partner in crime, Kathleen Saxton. Enjoy the rest of advertising.